In an era marked by unprecedented global challenges and deepening domestic divisions, the upcoming election is not just another political contest. It's a pivotal moment in shaping the future of the United States. As a father of two beautiful children, I find myself at a crossroads with the current political state of the United States. I have previously been a dedicated Democratic voter for quite some time, and I did so in hopes of finding myself in a more just, equitable, and peaceful world built upon common sense. That hope, unfortunately, never came true. In fact, I now find myself concerned that my children will eventually find themselves in a world that constantly bombards them with identity politics, extreme agendas, and a cloud of conflict ever hovering above their heads. As a devoted father, this is something I simply cannot accept, which is why I have claimed my independence from the current state of lunacy in the Democratic Party. I have made a point to seek out other options with which to use my vote. It's a decision I did not make lightly, and through what feels like countless hours of research, I've decided that I will be voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the 2024 election. I will do so with hope for our collective future and a desire to see a better world in which my children and future grandchildren might thrive. These are the top 10 reasons why I am voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as my future president. Now, keep in mind, these are in no particular order, but I would first like to talk about diplomacy. I am concerned that the United States has lost sight of its responsibility with regard to diplomatic leadership. For decades, our politicians have put a high priority on military intervention and economically coercive tactics in order to accomplish diplomatic goals. It should come as no surprise that these techniques haven't led to long-lasting relationships as of late, in particular with regards to the Middle East. Being strong-armed into a solution, well, that never feels great, and world leadership and entire cultures are pushing back against our actions. We need someone who believes in the power of a comprehensive understanding of global dynamics. More importantly, though, we need a president with a thorough commitment to fostering cooperative relationships with nations throughout the world, so that the cloud of military conflict can begin to disperse. We must admit that collaboration and confrontation accomplish two distinctly different goals on a global scale. The world is filled with complex international challenges. Whether we like to admit it or not, there is an interconnectedness between every nation in this world, and we must work together to achieve the benefits for the greater good. Unilateral actions and aggressive posturing quite often result in unintended consequences, and the fallout from these conclusions continues to place our world in a state of turmoil. My family needs a president who is willing and capable of talking to any leader at any time and under any circumstance. I believe that this is the only way forward and that RFK Jr. is the man to get that job done. Sovereignty is a vitally important aspect to us as United States citizens, and it should come as no surprise that other nations also value their own sovereignty. Each country has their own unique history, culture, and interests, and RFK Jr.'s diplomacy is rooted in the respect and dignity towards all nations. Understanding civility and thoughtful dialogue is the only way in which our leadership can find common ground. The United States is not unique in the necessities of life. It is through this approach that we might find common ground and establish the groundwork for lasting peace and cooperation. In the United States, we have a tendency to simply react to the symptoms of a conflict. It tends to be decisive and fast, creating solutions that are built upon quicksand with no real foundation. RFK Jr. understands that in order for diplomacy to truly be effective, it must address the root causes of a dispute. There are countless reasons for the necessity of diplomacy, such as grievances, inequality, injustice, and even resource scarcity. Diplomatic channels can be particularly effective at addressing these underlying issues, leading to a more stable and secure world for my family. It will require a compassionate, intelligent, and tenacious soul to accomplish this goal, and these are traits that I believe resonate deeply within Bobby Kennedy. Cooperation, dialogue, and respect for sovereignty have been in short supply as of late. While there is no shortage of people who are more than happy to speak for our leadership on these issues, it is vitally important to remind ourselves that actual words spoken by our president are the ones that resonate most thoroughly in global politics. Once again, my family needs a president who is willing and capable of talking to any leader at any time and under any circumstance. Next, let's talk about secure borders with vision. It is becoming more and more apparent that the border crisis is going to be a deciding factor for many Americans in the 2024 election. It's quite clear that the Biden administration is floundering on the subject, and the general public, myself included, seem poised to hold him accountable in the upcoming election. I will be honest here. I believe that RFK Jr. is headed in the right direction in his border policy, but if he wants to win the election, he's going to have to strengthen his position even more in order to win over more voters. Anyways, let's take a peek at what he has planned. RFK Jr. has a vision for immigration that is founded upon what he calls tall walls and wide gates. He wants border security that aims to strike a balance between keeping our borders safe and respecting human rights. Our borders are a matter of national security, and our politicians are playing games with the future of our families. He's stepping away from the old playbook of using this issue as a political football or just avoiding tough choices altogether. Instead, RFK Jr. seeks to provide a practical and humane approach. He plans to upgrade our border security with the latest tech. This means drones for better surveillance, thermal imaging for nighttime use, and sensors that pick up illegal crossings, all of which could make security more efficient without turning it into an arms race. He also plans to increase physical barriers while insisting that there is no need to wall off the entire 2,000-mile span of the border. RFK Jr. also wants to fix our immigration system to make it fairer and faster. He's talking about cutting through the red tape that slows down legal immigration and making sure asylum seekers are treated with respect. He understands that many people come to the U.S. seeking safety from violence and persecution, and he wants to offer them a legitimate path for asylum. But in order to do so, he wants to fully fund courts, services, border agencies, and asylum judges. He believes that a significant portion of the problems that we face at the border are due to the inefficiencies in the system and the length of time that the process requires. He believes that having cases heard swiftly is essential to the process of legal immigration. True to many of his other policies, Bobby Kennedy believes that we must get to the root of why people migrate in the first place. He's keen on working with other countries to help them improve their economic and security situations so fewer people feel the need to flee. If not, we will continue to chase our tail with regards to the border crisis, with no firm foundation from which to build towards a more secure national border. One of the biggest reasons why I am voting for RFK Jr. is because he has a big heart when it comes to families. His thoughts on border solutions are no different. Policies that split families up at the border are inhumane and dangerous. We must be sensitive to the needs of children and their parents, and keeping them together should be a necessity throughout the process. And let's not forget about the communities that exist along the border. Border security will create jobs that these communities both need and deserve. Security, technology, healthcare, and environmental management are just a few of the new opportunities that will be available in these regions, making these locations better places to live, work, and have a family, maybe even accomplish the American dream. In short, RFK Jr.'s approach to border security and immigration is all about being effective and humane. He's looking to protect our borders in a way that also upholds our values and respects people's rights, tackling deep-rooted causes of migration and improving the well-being of border communities. Will it be enough to convince people to vote for him? Well, we shall see. But at the very least, it's a fresh take that promises both security and compassion at the same time. Next, we need to talk about bipartisan cooperation. As a dad, I often find myself mediating small disputes, which involves sitting everyone down, talking it out, and finding a middle ground. It's a basic but essential part of parenting. This approach resonates with me when I see RFK Jr.'s commitment to bipartisan cooperation in politics. It's inspiring to see a leader who understands that progress is rooted in collaboration, not in clinging stubbornly to one side or another. RFK Jr. has consistently reached across the aisle to address significant issues such as healthcare reform and revitalizing the economy, matters that directly affect families just like mine. RFK Jr. handles political issues in a way that is strikingly similar to resolving a family argument. He ensures that everyone is heard and blends multiple viewpoints to craft effective solutions. He appreciates that sustainable policies need broad support, and his ability to unify diverse opinions is not just impressive, it's necessary for the benefit of our country. His effectiveness is evident as his broad appeal across party lines is reflected in his polling numbers. This isn't just skillful leadership, it's the application of common sense, something sorely needed in our government today. Moreover, RFK Jr. values a variety of perspectives. He regularly convenes groups of experts from across political spectrums to deliberate on everything from economic strategies to national security measures. I find it refreshing to see a candidate who openly admits that he doesn't have a solution to every single problem. Creating advisory panels featuring a mix of political leaders from various backgrounds with a variety of skill sets is the best way to unify our nation while creating a more efficient and prosperous nation for families throughout this great nation. To accomplish this goal, we must reduce political tension and foster unity that goes beyond mere policymaking. If we can mend the division amongst the citizens of the United States, then we can reduce the bickering and stagnation in Washington, D.C. If we can just find a way to make certain that our differences become our strength, then there is truly nothing that we cannot accomplish. Ultimately, it's crucial to me that my children grow up in an environment where cooperation is preferred over confrontation. RFK Jr.'s approach promises to lower the national temperature and cultivate a more collaborative political atmosphere. That is why he has earned my vote. How about we reduce corporate power over the United States of America? There's very little doubt in my mind that corporations and special interests have infiltrated our government policies to such an extent that we can no longer trust what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears. It is truly a sad state of affairs when entities can claim power over the people's vote. Serving our country as an elected leader on various levels is no longer the peak of the mountaintop. No, it simply opens the doors for connections to the corporate pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Laws and legislation are no longer being developed based upon campaign trail promises. No, they are being built around a pervasive quid pro quo that abuses and disregards the power of the people. While we may vote our leaders into place on Election Day, for many of them, that is the last time that they will spend any effort caring about we, the people. That is why I am voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Throughout my research into RFK Jr., it has become glaringly obvious that this man is not bought and paid for. He has spent nearly his entire adult life fighting for the little guy, cleaning up our waterways and aggressively litigating against giant entities that have selfishly left our families, our health, and environment worse for the wear. He wants to take up our cause to create a better world that isn't entirely beholden to the whims of the corporate overlords and under unfair consequences that citizens must suffer due to their greed. While many candidates before him have stood at a podium with promises to do the same, it is obvious that their words amount to a sleight of hand, distracting us from their true endeavors. We must dissolve the corrupt merger between nefarious entities and our politicians, but we cannot do so within the confines of the current two-party system. We cannot do so when the establishment refuses to listen to our hopes and dreams for the future of our children and subsequent generations to come. How can our voice be heard in the 2024 election when both parties have chosen candidates that the vast majority of us don't want to vote for? When our options are hand-selected for us through mega donors, super PACs, and special interests, how can we ever hope that they will have our best interests at heart? The truth is, we can't, now more than ever. That has me petrified of the world that my children and grandchildren will inherit. In a few short decades, it is possible that their God-given rights to freedom and the pursuit of happiness will be cut short because of a backroom deal. Fat cats and fat wallets buying our government, well, that's absolutely unacceptable to me. Detangling this merger will prove to be an incredibly monumental task for RFK Jr. I have my doubts that anyone could get this job done. However, it is important that we try. It is important that we make it very clear to the global powers that we are willing to do whatever it takes to regain the power of the citizenry. And for me, that first step towards the goal is to select Robert F. Kennedy within the cozy confines of a voting booth. I believe in his passion. I trust his promises, and in him I see a man who places no value in any amount of gold awaiting at the end of a rainbow. I see a man who stands above the glitter and shine and instead finds that our well-being is the only truly priceless treasure in this country. And for that, I am grateful. For that, he has earned my vote. Next, let's talk about ending the forever wars. As a father of two beautiful children, I have to believe that mankind is capable of evolving beyond conflict to embrace peace. Unfortunately, we have seen far too common a theme throughout history of man, the notion that a nation's strength is synonymous with its military might. History has shown us that power can be measured by battles won, territories conquered, and enemies vanquished. However, a deeper look at history shows that true strength is derived not only from a weapon, but from the vitality of the internal fabric of a nation. Abundant infrastructure, economy, society, and industry are hallmarks of a thriving world and a thriving nation. And it is with this vision that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is establishing his policies. In the context of America's trajectory over the past few decades, I find myself desiring a more holistic approach towards a future for my children and future grandchildren. Let's face it, we are stuck in a paradoxical situation. The United States of America boasts the most significant military arsenal in human history. An unfathomable amount of taxpayer dollars are funneled towards the military-industrial complex on a daily basis. Meanwhile, under the weight of neglect, our internal foundation has crumbled right before our eyes. For decades, we have narrowly focused on external threats, and that has led to the erosion of vital components of American strength. Infrastructure projects have been delayed or underfunded, economic inequality has widened, societal divisions have been lit ablaze, and industrial sectors, well, they've been ignored. We are now surrounded by the consequences of this neglect. We are strong on the surface, but our core has become brittle, with cracks and fissures beginning to show. I believe that the Kennedy administration is well aware of this alarming trend and will make every effort to create an entire paradigm shift. Instead of a singular focus on external adversaries, he wants to direct his eyes towards an internal revitalization that American families desperately need in order to support their hopes and dreams. RFK Jr. believes that the strength of our great nation lies in the well-being of our citizens, the efficiency and diversity of our industries, and the resilience of our infrastructure. This would be no small feat to accomplish, and it would require a foundation-level adjustment to our priorities. It would also require that we redirect investment towards enhancing fundamental components of this nation. Our defense spending is very quickly approaching $1 trillion on an annual basis. That's trillion with a T. We have nearly 800 military bases throughout the world. These numbers shine a light upon the singular focus of militarization as a measure of strength. Meanwhile, at home, we find citizens more polarized than ever. Our borders are a porous mess. Inflation, it's decimating family savings, and the American dream, well, that is disappearing at a surprising pace. Now comes the hard part. To foster a climate of peace and cooperation amongst nations, we have to admit that it will require a good faith effort on the United States. That's right. To do so, we have to dismantle the entrenched mindset of viewing the world through the lens of enemies and adversaries, and as with any good relationship, peace, well, it requires some give and take. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a vision to reduce aggression not only for America, but for nations throughout the world. This requires an administration that pledges to lead by example and make a commitment to respecting sovereignty, international cooperation, and inspiring grassroots freedom. By alleviating some of the need for military might, we can free up funds and resources that will be necessary for repairing the cracks in the American society. At the core of RFK Jr.'s policies is a distinct aim to restore America's moral leadership on a global stage. There is an interdependence of internal and external forces in shaping our strength as a nation. For our families, we must have a president who tenaciously charts a path forward towards a more resilient, prosperous, and peaceful future. Countless empires have failed throughout history. Perhaps it's time to place a greater value in humility and cooperation. We can be a beacon of freedom and democracy, but first we must look in the mirror, be honest with ourselves, admit our faults, and find a way to repair what truly makes our country great. Together, we can build a peaceful and prosperous future for our children without the gray clouds of military conflict constantly soaring over our heads. I believe that we can do that with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as our president. In all of this, we must find a way to reevaluate and strengthen our support for our veterans. As Americans, we all owe a profound debt to our veterans for their sacrifices that they have made while serving in the military. The burdens they carry with them exact a toll that will be carried for a lifetime. RFK Jr., he understands that we must not just show our support for veterans, but also we must value their insights and expertise in shaping the future for our families. While we have been sitting at home surrounded by the safety and security that we have all taken for granted, our military has been busy putting their lives on the line and becoming experts in their field. Bobby Kennedy, well, he wants to establish a Veterans Council within the executive offices. The truth is that our veterans need to be heard, and they have more than earned a streamlined system to respond to their concerns. Moreover, their experiences can shed light on the inefficiencies embedded within our military, and we can leverage that knowledge to save valuable taxpayer dollars. Veterans are not just former soldiers, but also potential leaders who can guide our communities and nation towards unity and prosperity. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. insists that many veterans have sacrificed their youth for the security of our nation. When I look at my children giggling on a playground, that very sentiment, well, that brings a tear to my eye. I believe that there should be no limit to the commitments that we make to our brave veterans as a nation. We must commit ourselves towards advancing the benefits that they have earned and find a way to honor the ultimate sacrifice of lives taken way too soon. This is something that RFK Jr. truly takes to heart, and a significant reason why I plan on giving him my vote. As for me and my family, well, we will always stand for the flag. We'll shake the hands of our veterans, and we'll give a heartfelt thank you to anyone who made the decision to protect our freedoms through service to our nation. Now I think is a good time to discuss embracing our freedoms. The further I research the candidates in the 2024 election, the more concerned I become about our individual freedoms coming under fire. I think we have taken for granted the fact that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness were written into our Declaration of Independence. Just because those words are written into a foundational document of our country doesn't mean that we can sit on our laurels and expect that they will always be true. The fact of the matter is that our individual freedoms are currently facing challenges from various fronts in politics. Corporations, media, technology, education, and so many more are coming at us. We need a president who stubbornly stands amidst the fray to protect our country from the people and entities seeking to strip us from what makes us great. I believe that RFK Jr. emerges as a steadfast defender of our freedoms. The very core pillar of his platform has a foundation of safeguarding our God-given rights and freedoms. I believe that Robert Kennedy views the Constitution not merely as a historical artifact, but rather a collection of living principles that absolutely must be defended and promoted. He is obsessively adamant about our freedom of speech, our right to privacy, and the right to peacefully assemble. He himself has successfully defended himself against the arrows and chains that would seek to limit his liberties in the past. For the future of all of our children, we must never surrender our essential rights, because once we do, they will never be given back to future generations. For the safety and security of my family, I must insist that they have the opportunity to freely express opinions, criticize their government, and advocate for real change without the fear of repression from their government leaders. I believe that RFK Jr. is the only current candidate committed to seeing these things through. The digital age is just another facet of modern society with the potential to incessantly attack our personal privacy. We will need a president dedicated to implement robust measures to protect our individual freedoms from unwanted surveillance and data breaches. It seems like we have all become conditioned to accept the inevitability of a surveillance state in the United States of America. It is a shameful fact that we ignore the very clear evidence in front of our eyes, and I suspect that the Founding Fathers would shake their heads in disgust at the state of affairs today. We need to ensure that the privacy rights that we value keep pace with technological advancements, and we must push for stronger regulation on data collection and use. We cannot be afraid to stand up to the corporate greed, the political manipulation, and nefarious characters who are banking on our apathy. I believe that RFK Jr. is just the man to inspire us to get off our laurels and protect our freedoms. We need somebody who can not only stand there in front of us, but that we can stand behind as well. Without a doubt, the chronic disease epidemic in America is exacting a significant toll upon millions of families throughout this nation. It is a limiting factor in accomplishing greatness as a nation, and we can no longer ignore our need to find a solution. RFK Jr. rises to the top on this subject as the only candidate declaring America's health an existential threat. The monetary burden upon the stability of our households cannot be overstated. It eats away at savings, limits our chances at the American dream, and prevents stability within the middle class. We have to find a solution, and I'm inspired by Bobby Kennedy and his willingness to drive us forward on the subject. While his strategy is detailed, it is important to note that it seems to still be evolving, which I believe is a good thing. To assume that he has the exact solution to such a gigantic problem would be irresponsible, but I believe that his passion on the subject can provide us a giant step forward as we begin the journey. As we approach this multifaceted issue, we must also admit that it will require a multifaceted approach with a foundation built upon prevention. Many chronic diseases are preventable with simple lifestyle changes, and we need to create effective nationwide programs that promote healthy eating, physical activity, and cessation of smoking, amongst many others. By investing in public health campaigns and education, we can foster a culture of health awareness and empower individuals to make informed choices. Furthermore, we must drastically decrease the corporate incentive to commoditize our health as a nation. It would seem that the ingredients list on our food products is getting longer by the day. We are bombarded with fake promises of highly processed, quote, health foods, and our supplements make all these promises that it will make our life better no matter what's ailing us. There's also monopolistic powers that are constantly attacking and absorbing farmlands and meat production processes. The playing field is unfairly being skewed in favor of large corporations, and that doesn't bode well for providing healthy and nutritious foods for our children and subsequent generations. This is one of my biggest concerns as a parent, and I am thankful that RFK Jr. is willing to stand for my family firmly in favor of common sense policies on the subject. Unfortunately, the American healthcare industry, well, that's built upon the concept of reacting to symptoms instead of proactively preventing them. Doctors, physicians, and nurses are increasingly funneled into strict and unyielding standard operating procedures that fail to make room for excellence in the field of medicine. Pharmaceutical companies saturate our media with advertisements for the latest costly permanent fixes they call to our health issues, aiming to retain a customer for life until their very last day. The truth is that there's no incentive for the medical field to find, promote, and produce the actual solutions that our sick country needs to flourish. I refuse to accept this reality for my children, and it is my hope that RFK Jr. will dismantle the abuse of power that allows our health and wellness to be dismissed in favor of shareholder returns. We must also get ahead of the risk factors and incentivize healthcare providers to focus more on patient education and personal decision making, and hopefully that can stop leading us to chronic conditions in the first place. We must make preventable healthcare easily accessible. Key word here, low cost, and free it from the corruption that takes advantage of our health conditions. Speaking of accessibility, can we please remove the barriers to healthcare by expanding coverage instead of slowly chipping away at procedures that insurance companies deem to be, quote, unnecessary? Why do insurance companies and their gluttonous desire for profit get to dictate our needs for health? We need to create a system where our doctors are truly allowed to be our advocates in all circumstances and not relegated to paper pushers as they fight for life-saving preventative medicine, procedures, and lifestyle improvements. And finally, RFK Jr. recognizes the role of environmental and social determinants in health and the development of chronic diseases. Clean air, clean water, safe housing, and nutritious foods are all fundamentally essential for components to healthy and fulfilling lifestyles. We must address these underlying factors through policy reform so that everyone has access to a foundation conducive to healthy decisions and lifestyles. If we make the choice of tackling these issues head-on instead of simply sticking our head in the sand, then we can reduce health disparities throughout the nation. With RFK Jr. as our president, I believe that we can also fundamentally change the happiness and health of our families for generations to come. And that leads me to the next topic, water. Clean water, most importantly. As a father, it's fundamental and it's necessary for the future of my children and future generations. As we approach the 2024 election, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has proven to care about the water that my children and my future grandchildren will inherit. Republicans are quick to label him as an extremist on the environmental front in an attempt to discredit his proven history of protecting our waterways. Democrats are quick to point to the billions upon billions of dollars that the Biden administration has committed towards green initiatives as a reason to vote for blue no matter who. However, as that smoke begins to clear, it's becoming more apparent that we have found yet another way to provide a massive cash grab for big corporations disguised under a cloak of being green. Clean water isn't a radical concept, and it should not require radical ideas. It simply requires that a person with a deeply profound respect for the environment and a willingness to hold people and corporations accountable for their actions in degrading our most important resources, well, it requires that they rise to the top. This conviction drives my support for RFK Jr. and his advocacy for clean water initiatives. RFK Jr.'s legacy of environmental activism includes his instrumental role in the cleanup of the Hudson River. It was a landmark achievement in water restoration efforts, and as a concerned parent, I am deeply inspired by his dedication in preserving and revitalizing this vital waterway. For decades, the Hudson River suffered from industrial pollution, with toxic chemicals and wastes contaminating its once pristine waters. It endangered the health and safety of neighboring communities. Recognizing that there was an urgent need for action, Bobby Kennedy, he helped to lead the charge in holding polluters accountable for their actions and advocating for comprehensive cleanup efforts. Bobby Kennedy, he played a pivotal role in the landmark Hudson River National Resource Damage Assessment in 1996. It required that General Electric dredge and remove contaminated sediment from the river. It addressed decades of industrial pollution. The cleanup of the Hudson River, that stands as a testament to Bobby Kennedy's unwavering commitment to environmental justice and public health. By holding polluters accountable and demanding accountability, he's helping to restore the Hudson River to its natural beauty and ecological vitality. Will it ever go back to the way it was? More than likely not. And that is precisely the problem that we face today. Companies and corporations feel that they are entitled to ruin vitally important resources that the average citizen depends upon. It is their incessant desire to impress investors. I'll tell you what. I'm sick and tired of valuing a small, crumpled-up piece of paper more than the beauty, the safety, and the security that Mother Nature so graciously provides to all of us. I personally believe that RFK Jr. is the man to carry our nation forward on environmental policy, because he believes that it is not simply enough to force companies to fix their problems after the fact. No, it is far more important to stop these issues before they ever become an issue in the first place. Right now, millions of people still lack the essential resource of clean water. As RFK Jr., he champions policies and legislations to protect our water resources, regulate pollution, and ensure equitable distribution. I see a beacon of hope for a safer and healthier future for my family. His commitment to infrastructure development aligns with my concerns as well. Access to clean water, it's not just a convenience, but a matter of public health and safety. By investing in water treatment plants and improving distribution networks, we can safeguard our communities from waterborne diseases and environmental hazards. We must have a president who is always looking forward to rectify the sins of our past. We have to embrace technology and clean water research to develop, as well as find efficient ways to extract existing pollutants. We can guarantee that the future generations will have better water than we experience today, and I believe that RFK Jr. is the man to get that job done. Last, but certainly not least, in this list of top 10 reasons why I am voting for RFK Jr., I believe that we need to revitalize the middle class, inspire younger generations, and advance the American dream. I believe that RFK Jr. will make every effort to reinvigorate the American middle class. I know that I'm not the only one who sees the American dream slipping through our fingers like sand. For too long, the American middle class has been ignored and taken advantage of. We have been hit hard by economic shift and policy neglect. Both parties have been usurped by extremism demanded by a small contingency of screaming actors and corporate interests. The majority of this country has been pushed aside and told to wait for a turn that is unlikely to ever happen. I cannot sit still as I see the disparity between the haves and the have-nots widen. For the sake of my children, I must insist that the status quo be shattered in favor of returning to a common-sense approach to running our country. For decades, our young people have been targeted by an education system that has been spiraling out of control. The first decision that a high school graduate must make is whether or not they are going to take an exorbitant school loan to get a degree from a college that values the expansion of bureaucratic managers over actual educations that they provide. Our 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in this country can barely make the correct choices for breakfast. How can we claim that we are making the correct decisions as a nation when we saddle them with a financial burden that will last decades? We need to stop being surprised that our young adults are living with their parents throughout their 20s, when we have allowed them to be taken advantage of by the institutions that were originally intended to be the key holders of the American dream. To combat these issues, RFK Jr. intends to institute reform by eliminating interest payments on future and past school loans. He also plans on making them retroactive so that many people will find their payments decrease or entirely eliminated immediately. I know this is an extremely controversial topic, and I'm more than willing to admit that it needs some fine-tuning. But I truly believe that our nation needs to find a way to reinvigorate our youth towards becoming productive members of society again. RFK Jr. also aims to shine a brighter light on the importance of trades in our country. This is something that I am wholeheartedly in favor of. When I was making my own educational decisions, external forces in favor of college created an environment that treated the words trade school in a derogatory context. How I wish I had not been brainwashed in my youth. Today I see highly successful individuals who are capable of creating, fixing, and building with their own two hands, and I'm jealous of the freedom that they have. If I'm being honest, my deepest desire is that my children can find themselves inspired by a trade so that they can enjoy the satisfaction of being creative and productive members of society with the opportunity to mold their own futures based upon their desires. What a wonderful world that would be. I'm also alarmed by the drastic changes that we have seen in the establishment of families throughout this nation. Our young people are saddled with suffocating debt, and the housing market is stacked against them, and the middle-class jobs, well, they're just not paying enough. There's a rising sense of insecurity, and that's delaying creation of families. From my own personal experience, we delayed having children to the point that doctors would warn of the pitfalls of a geriatric pregnancy. The cards were stacked against us to the point that our American dream was delayed and changed entirely. I look at my two beautiful children, and they fill my heart with so much joy and love. But do I wish that I could have had at least one more addition to our family? Yes, I most certainly do. Unfortunately, we have come to the heartbreaking conclusion that our dream will likely never come true. The same circumstances that we experienced are simply strengthened within today's young people. They have lost the hope that most people from older generations took for granted. I'm concerned that if we choose not to bolster the middle class and revitalize the American dream for the younger generation, the resulting apathy could stifle the vibrant, prosperous future that we envision for our children. In my opinion, RFK Jr. is the only candidate with a vision that is not bound by special interests of corporations and political parties. Does he have his faults? Yeah, he's human. Of course he does. Do I agree with him on every single policy? Well, absolutely not. However, it is time for us to break free from the limitations that are imposed upon us by the two-party system. We need common sense to be reintroduced to the political discussion, and we need to come together and heal our divided nation. We need a president who can cut through the red tape and truly, finally act in the best interests of the American people. As a father, desperately hoping to create a better future for my children, I'm proud to say that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has earned my vote in 2024. And this ends my top 10 reasons why I am voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. RFK all the way.